In this video, I'd like to introduce how to apply metal foil or gold leaf to your jewelry objects. And I have a piece over here that's actually quite old. I must have made this sometime during the early 90s. And it's before I used the channel method to hang pieces, although I still like to do this too. Drill through it in the more traditional way and attach jump rings. But the gold you see here is actually real gold. It's 22 karat gold leaf that I applied to the surface, and I applied it to the surface as the final stage of development after all of the varnishing was done. I did apply one additional coat of varnish on top of the gold leaf to protect it. There are two different types of gold leaf that I like to use. Actually, I should say this is a composite metal foil. It isn't actually 22 karat gold leaf. The flake kind is a lot of fun. After you prepare the piece for its application, you can dip your brush into a little plastic container, holding some of this flake material, and simply dab it onto the surface of the adhesive, and it'll stick. And I'll demonstrate how to do that. The metal leaf that comes in sheets like this is a little bit more difficult to work with, and you definitely don't want to have a fan going when you work with this. The leaf is extremely thin. So is this. But because this is in sheet form, you have to be very careful when you apply it, and apply it properly. Otherwise, it'll just blow away. You don't want to attempt to take it off its paper. You want to leave it sandwiched in the paper when you apply it, and I'll show you how I do that. What are the tools you need? Well, aside from your gold leaf material, gold leaf adhesive, a variety of soft brushes. I use my watercolor brushes that I set aside specifically for leaf applications. They're relatively soft and effectively burnish down the leaf material. I also use either a toothbrush or a coarse brush for working the leaf onto the surface. And I should add, before I continue, that I always apply the leaf material when I'm completely finished the varnishing process and have achieved a really nice surface. How do we begin? Using the gold leaf adhesive, which needs to be, if it's brand new, you should stir it first. We're going to apply that adhesive to the back and then let the piece dry. I have to warn you in advance, this is a very, very noxious smell. I don't like it. But you have no choice, you have to use this material. Another thing that I should mention is I lightly buff the surface before I apply the adhesive. This will guarantee that the adhesive does not bead up and that I get complete coverage. And in this situation, that's what I want to do. Make sure your surface is covered. You cannot apply your gold leaf material until this adhesive has completely dried. How do you know when it's dry? Well, number one, your surface is not going to be wet any longer. And if you notice, it's going on with a milky look to it. When it's totally dry, that milky look is gone completely. It becomes transparent. One layer of adhesive should be enough. You want to thoroughly cover your surface. Then forget about it for maybe a half hour or so. I find with adhesive that it can take upwards of an hour to dry completely. I'm never in a rush when I do this. I just simply allow it to dry, and I make sure it's thoroughly dry before I apply my metal foil to the adhesive. And that's important. If I was to apply it when it was wet, I would wind up with a complete mess, and it would damage the piece. I would need to sand the whole thing down. So let it dry. I can't do anything right now but leave it alone. Clean my brush out, soapy water. And actually, since this is going to be standing for at least a half hour or so, I'm going to bring my brush over to the sink and wash it out. They're completely dry. Looking closely at the surface, it is completely transparent. There are no milky white areas that would indicate still wet adhesive material. So we're ready to apply our gold leaf to this piece. And then we'll also do something decorative on the surface with the gold leaf. Move this out of our way. Right now, move that out of our way. How do I work with this material? I work with this material the same way I work with 22 karat gold leaf. I make sure no fans are on because this is so thin. If a fan is on, I'm going to have big problems. You never attempt to remove the gold from the backing paper. You will go crazy. This is wafer thin. It's going to want to float. Probably the best thing to do with this is simply place it on the surface. Then what I like to do is simply flip it over. Having flipped over the piece, I'll lift away the sandwiched gold leaf foil, being very careful not to damage anything, and then with my large, soft paintbrush, watercolor paintbrush, I'll press the surface of the gold foil. Notice it's starting to break away relatively quickly. And that's how I break it away. I don't intentionally rip it from the sheet of gold. Okay, now I'll move it out. Close that. Put that back in its package. Keep it safe. What I like to do is continue to press down, or if you don't want to hold it with your finger, you could even hold it with another brush. By working into it this way, I'm pushing my brush into it. I'm pushing down onto the metal foil. It's gradually breaking away from the edge of the piece. I'll always hold the piece between a layer of paper towel. The stiffer brush will break away the leaf that isn't held securely in place with adhesive. Also, the leaf material is so extraordinarily fine that it picks up the texture of the paper itself. where gold leaf is sticking, and yet there is no adhesive. I don't want it to stick there. It's easy to just scratch away using the edge of something. In this case, I'm using the edge of my watercolor brush. Wonderful. Look at that. Of course, that area there, I actually think I'm going to leave it. I like the broken effect where some of the paper shows through. But if you wanted to cover it, you could simply apply it with more adhesive. Apparently there's no adhesive in that area. I skipped an area. Apply more adhesive there and let it dry and reapply some gold leaf. Also, don't throw out the stuff that you flake off like this. What I'll do is I'll save that in a bin. There we go. It'll come in handy at a later time. You just watched me apply the leaf material to the back. I'd also like to apply gold leaf to the surface of this. The back is a solid piece. Now on the front, I'm going to incorporate my design and work in the metal flakes. How do I begin? Well, first thing I do, since this is really slick, haven't been varnished many times, is I buff the surface with that very fine sandpaper. Wipe off any powder that might have resulted from sanding. I'm creating a border around the perimeter of the piece, and I'm varying the thickness of the border from thin to thicker to create an interesting design. I'll flow the adhesive on the surface. Notice how I flow this adhesive. Quite a bit there, so rather than dip my brush back into the bottle, I'll just lift off some adhesive from that area. Good. Okay, let's let it dry. Make sure you clean off your brush in soapy water. Now, while we're allowing that to dry, what I wanted to point out is I'll take some of this flake material, put it in a little plastic container. That makes it a lot easier to dispense. This flake material is greatly affected by static electricity. It wants to cling to everything. Even though today is a hot, humid summer day, this is acting like it's the dead of winter when we had desert dry conditions in the house. It's just sticking to the plastic. Beautiful. So what do we do next? Often what I'll do is I'll simply hold the pendant over the container. It's the easiest way. And work it on. Or you could even stick it in there like that. The objective right now is simply to get it covered. It's kind of fun. I burnish away with my brush, rub it into the surface. I really like the look of the variegated metal leaf. The variety of tone adds a dimension that is very nice. Now that the metal leaf has been applied to the front and the back, the final step is to seal it with varnish. I'm also making sure that I get the edge. The decorative possibilities are absolutely unlimited. So I think what I would like to do is work in some more gold leaf into the surface. I'm thinking this through as I go along. I have to be careful because once I make a mark with a Sharpie, I'm stuck with it. But I'm thinking a long linear filament coming down like this and ended in a spiral right here. So I'm going to work that in. I'm going to turn off the camera and really hover over this piece and work in that design. I wanted to turn the camera on one last time to point out what I'm trying to do here. I'm breaking up this area with more linear elements, and I like this curvilinear motif that I've built in. Reminds me a little of Art Nouveau. Now I'll proceed to flow my adhesive into this. What kind of a brush should I use? Since this is a linear element, I think I would be safest using a watercolor liner brush. It's going to give me the line thickness that I need. Very careful. This is when I definitely don't want to have too many cups of coffee. Steadiness, so important. This is also a good example of how I'm trying to rescue a piece that I wasn't quite happy with. I never throw anything out, even my failures. Failures, I don't think of as failures. I think of them as steps in a process. Steps that are leading me somewhere, and I just haven't realized the destination yet. Sometimes it doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes I need to take the piece, save it, come back to it. Okay, time to let that dry. The additional linear element that I worked in and covered with adhesive is dry now. Let's continue to work in the metal leaf. See how I just pile it on? In class, my students are mesmerized by this process. They just love it. I think it's the thrill of watching a design emerge before your very eyes. The transformation from the black drawing to the gold effect is a fun thing to see. Now, I'm continuing to burnish into it. I'm about to take it out. Notice, too, that you cannot tell that these were applied at different times. The leaf integrates seamlessly into previously applied areas. Even though there's an intervening layer of varnish covering it, it's still, there's no way of distinguishing what I just did from what I previously did. Beautiful. That should tell you that you can continue to build in like this until you're completely happy. Time to let it dry. I think I've developed it enough. Hope you enjoyed watching the video.